Prabhakar, of course, who's been our retail guru here on the show.
Well, it's three things: prices, prices, prices. For retailers and even designers to not only get their brand out, but also go to the customer. The one thing that I really wanted to do is put this in the hands of the consumer. It's really important that the consumer kind of take control over it.
Everyone. I feel like my necklace is rubbing against this mic, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off, unfortunately, so you can hear me a little bit better. Sorry about that. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, that's a little bit better. Hey everyone, thank you so much. And what about that intro? Oh my gosh, it was as if I was walking out as a starting lineup for the Miami Heat. I mean, how about I'm gonna give King James a run for his money, right? Hitha Prabhakar, center, starting lineup from Smith College. Anyway, that was an amazing intro. Dan, thank you so much for having me, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I just wanted to start out by talking about my perspective on the economy. I don't know if a lot of you out there know who I am. If you watch MSNBC on the weekends, I do the retail and economic reports. I'm a retail and economic analyst. And before I had a foray into the broadcast journalism world, when my career took that trajectory, I too owned my own small business. And that's really had an impact on how I report on the economy and how I see the economy and where it's going into 2013. So let's start. I'm going to tell you my personal story. In 2007, it was the end of 2007, I wanted to take a huge risk. I wanted to start my own company, and it was going to be called the Style File Group. Now, if you remember at the end of 2007, everyone was talking about how there was this recession, it was coming. Well, it hit in 2008, and a lot of my friends and family were not happy about it. What I was going to do today, I was going to play a voicemail from my mother, who is, bless her heart, a very concerned Indian mom. Lots of words that she used. This is not a good idea. This is stupid. What are you thinking? The best voicemail, though, was when she said, "If this does not succeed, you owe me all of the college tuition I paid for your undergraduate degree." So there was a lot of pressure on my shoulders, to say the least. Now, you remember also in 2008, Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers crashed. Now, Bear Stearns was my former employer. That's the first investment bank that I started out in when I graduated from college, so that ceased to exist. Also, Lehman Brothers wiped off the face of the Dow Jones. Bye-bye. Also, speaking of the Dow Jones, it hit its lowest point in 2008, in December. It was once trading at around 1,400. It hit 6,600. So we're seeing some serious dips, and I was starting my own business. And speaking of dips, what about my 401k? It lost 25% of its value in the first couple months of the recession, I guess, right when the economy crashed. I had never seen anything like that in my life. So to talk about fear that was implemented in me, I mean, I really felt like I was going against all odds here. Did anyone know out here who, if anyone watches CNBC, can you raise your hand? Does anyone watch CNBC? Can you tell me who Jim Cramer is? Okay, I can't see very far, but I'm going to choose you right here in the front. Who's Jim Cramer? Okay, exactly. I don't know if you heard or not, but he's one of the financial analysts. He's also a thinker. He's a wonderful person, but he was predicting what was going to happen in 2008, and it was all doom and gloom, and all I could hear was Jim's voice freaking out, telling everyone how bad this was going to be. Oh my gosh, get prepared, get prepared. This was going to be it. So needless to say, I was sufficiently freaked out, and the conditions were absolutely not right to start a business. But I persevered. I continued. Why did I do it? Because I believed in the product that I was selling, which was retail research reports to institutional investors On the retail side, also hedge funds. So this was also an environment that was going to be severely affected by this economic downturn. Okay. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because, as I said, this really has impacted the way I report on the economy, as well as how I see the economy going. Now, as Dan was saying, a lot of you came from pretty cold places, right? We're looking outside. I was just outside a couple minutes ago. It was 75 degrees, it's beautiful. But we're all coming from cold places. We're also coming from a very cold and chilly economy. That is 2012. So let's sort of review what happened in 2012. All right, we're talking about unemployment, right? And before I start to, I just want to say this isn't meant to be sort of a wonky conversation about economics. I want to make it fun. But we all know what happened with unemployment. It stagnated between 8.2% and 7.8%. Why is this important? Because the consumer, as they felt insecure about their jobs, they weren't going out and spending. Also, words coming at us like crazy. Financial crisis, fiscal cliff, euro crisis, downgrade. How, as business owners, were we able to even think that this was going to be, any sort of solution, a good economy? Also, the consumer, that's all they were hearing. That's partially my fault. I understand I do report this on air, but this is what was coming at us, and it did have an impact on that consumer. Also, speaking of fiscal cliff, crisis averted for the time being, but do you remember fourth quarter, the biggest quarter for retailers? That's all anyone was talking about. I was doing a web chat with a bunch of NBC watchers. They watched the Today Show. I was doing a web chat with them. They were saying, this one woman was saying how she couldn't buy Christmas gifts because she was afraid she was going to get hit by a tax bill of over $5,000. Now, most of that is averted, but a lot of people were thinking about they were going to have to pay higher taxes. Also, there were going to be spending cuts, and businesses weren't going to be able to spend as much as they wanted to. And of course, how can we not forget about the holiday season that we just had? Now, the National Retail Federation was saying that holiday season was going to do about 4.1% of growth. That was less than what we saw in 2011, which is a 5.6%, a gangbusters year, but the real numbers that came in, 2.4% year over year. So it's actually less than what the National Retail Federation had predicted was going to happen. So needless to say, 2011 wasn't such a stellar year. Understandably, a lot of us as business owners and as consumers were pessimistic. But check out what was optimistic. Pandora. Mostly because of you guys. Year to date, growth was increased by 3.6%. Quarterly, it was up 6.5%. And check out December. When fiscal cliff was happening and when retail sales were down, it was up 8.3%. So I think you all deserve a round of applause. Good for you all. Rocking it out. Good job. So again, I'm sorry about the wintry imagery, but it kind of describes what we're about to see in 2013. It's not going to get any better. And I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. I mean to be happy, but we're still going to a pretty chilly place. Check it out. So on the macro side, economists are expecting more lackluster growth for the global economy. We're not going to see a lot of growth happening there. Also, capital expenditures are also going to be down because of the lackluster growth. And unemployment, even though it's growing a little bit, it's still not going to be at the point that we want it. And where we want it is before 2007, before we saw that crash. Economists are also expecting GDP growth to be marginal and pretty good, but not as good as they wanted it to be. Also, what we're really concerned with, retail sales growth. Around 3 to 4%, Fitch is estimating that. This Fitch is a rating agency. They're expecting it to grow between 3 to 4% in 2013. But it's mostly going to be driven by online sales. So we're going to talk about that in 1 second, but that's where we're heading. Whenever I try to explain to people what it was like to run a small business, and I'm sure you all can relate, a lot of the time when I wasn't pulling out my hair or I wasn't up 14, 15 hours a day and into the night, it really sort of felt like I was climbing a mountain, a very icy mountain, because it was a bad economy. And I'm sure a lot of people here feel that way. But the good thing about climbing a mountain is that you will always come down and there's always a bright spot. So Let's talk about some of the challenges that small business owners are going to have in 2013. So, market share. I don't want to get too wonky here. Market share basically means making sure that your customers are coming into the door and not going to your competitor's store down the street. Okay? Discretionary spending. Discretionary spending basically means what your consumers or your customers are spending when they don't have to buy eggs, bread, milk. They're spending that extra money on Pandora bracelets and jewelry, but they're going to cut it back a little bit, and you've got to keep an eye on that. Also, employment levels. People are going to want to get hired. I was just watching on the news today that Lowe's was hiring about 19,000 part-time jobs. What does that mean? That long-term unemployment still isn't happening, and they're doing that to gear up for one of the busiest times of the year, which I had no idea that going into June is one of Lowe's and Home Depot's busiest times of years. I mean, who knew? But I knew that now. Wages are going to be stagnant. If your employers are asking for higher wages, it's probably not going to happen. I understand why, as a small business owner, that's not going to happen. You're worried. And I'm not really helping that worry right now, but I'm telling you, just be prepared, just be prepared. Also, if you want to expand your stores, probably best to hold back, because you know what? If you're going to expand those stores, you don't know if the consumers are going to come in, why expand? Okay, we're talking about payroll tax holidays. I know we've been hearing this a lot because of the fiscal cliff. Payroll tax holiday basically means that people that are making $40,000 to $50,000 are going to get hit with a tax bill between $1,000 to $1,200. Also, there's going to be taxes on wealthier consumers. Now, they move that amount. It's no longer $250,000 that counts as wealthy consumers. It's going to be about $400,000, but they're still going to get hit by taxes. I know a lot of the Pandora customer falls somewhere between that. They're either aspirational or they're wealthy. They're going to be thinking about these things. Also, the average paycheck is going to fall 1.4%. What does that mean? Again, your consumer is going to be thinking about where she is putting that money. And small businesses, they're not going to add very many jobs, as we just discussed. And if you're thinking about adding capital expenditure, so let's say you want to replace that copy machine or that new phone system. I understand a lot of you, and according to research, only 19% plan on adding new machines and basically infrastructure in the first 3 to 6 months. Why? Because we are uncertain as to what is happening in the economy. Now, on a macro level, there are going to be more temporary workers, like I had said, for Lowe's. There's going to be less investment in the future of business because there's not going to be a lot of growth. Lower productivity gains, again, when the economy starts to slow down, you're not going to see a lot of economic gains from businesses. People aren't going to be making as much money as you thought that you were going to make. And also, there's going to be a lower growth rate, which we've talked about. I like this quote. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. So the percentage of consumers expecting business conditions to improve over the next 6 months declined to 17.6% from 21.3%. In a nutshell, that basically means your consumer, I'm going to hammer it home one more time, it's going to be harder to get her to take that money out of her wallet and spend. Check out the jewelry sales market in from 2011 to 2012. You see it kind of ranging up and down here. In 2011, jewelry industry definitely saw some gains. It was about 11%, and that mostly had to do with inflation. So inflation, higher prices on silver, higher prices on gold, that made jewelry sales really go up. But in 2012, that inflation rate stabilized. So that really put jewelry on par with a lot of other sectors like apparel, electronics, footwear, automobiles, luxury items, and of course, other accessories. Now, I know I've been sort of doom and gloom, but there is a bright spot to all of this, okay? There really is, I swear. Check out what the hottest brands are for 2012, right? We see Vuitton, we have Hermes, Rolex, Chanel. What do you think that growth was driven by, and why those brands were so popular? Accessories. The consumer wants accessories. When she is feeling down in a down market, she's going to want to go ahead and buy accessories. The problem is, which accessories is she gonna buy, okay? If she's gonna part with her money, even though she doesn't wanna hold on to that, she wants to hold on to that money, if she's gonna buy one special item, what is she gonna buy, okay? So we're gonna look at some of the Pandora competitors here. We have Alex and Ani, we have Coach, we have Tiffany. What are they doing right? Well, we're talking about market share again, right? Remember that buzzword? So maintaining market share, they're making sure that that customer isn't going to any of their other customers. They have a product in their stores that everyone has to have, okay? So they want to make sure that no one's going to go anywhere else to get that product. They're also doing a lot of celebrity collaborations and endorsements. Now, I know Pandora has amazing endorsements going on. Ashley Wagner is one of them. I heard from a little bird that the gifting suite at the Golden Globes was unbelievable. People were making their personalized bracelets, and the celebrities were wearing them all around the festivities during Golden Globes. It was really exciting. So that's actually happening. But as small business owners, what you can do is to capitalize on that. You know, really talk about that with your customers, really kind of perpetuate that. Talk about it on your Twitter feeds, talk about it in your stores. This is something that gets the customer excited. Also, we're talking about omni-channel retailing. Now, just saying that word hurts my head, omni-channel retailing. But this really has a point. And you know where it comes from is, does everyone know here, Terry Lundgren, he's the chairman of Macy's. He kind of came up with this term, and now everyone is using it in retail. So basically, omni-channel retailing, it doesn't mean, and I feel everyone knows this here, but it really is what's going to be what's driving retail home into 2013. It's not just about having sales in your stores. It's about having sales online. It's also about making sure that customer, knowing that customer is making sales through her email. She's getting deals through her email. Sales are happening on her mobile device, and they're also happening in those stores. So it's sort of a 360, as I like to say, sales tactic here, and it's really important to get on board with that. Now, I heard a figure, I actually have it up here, retailing is going to be a $10 trillion industry by 2013, and you want to take a piece of it. How are you going to do that? When you're dealing with omni-channel retailing, the worst thing you could do is not connect to your customer on her own terms. Now, what does that mean? I don't know if you all are active on Facebook. I don't know if you're active on Twitter. You need to start being active on Facebook and Twitter. She's talking about your brand on her mobile device. She's Twittering it to her friends. She's sending pictures to her friends of these amazing charm bracelets and jewelry. You need to make sure that you're connecting to that customer on her terms. Also, becoming a tastemaker. Now, I know Pandora is amazing about being ahead of the curve. They came out with the charm bracelet. Suddenly, everyone's doing a charm bracelet. But what makes that important is that you have that trend in your stores way before anyone else has that in their stores, months before, and you're pushing it. You're making sure that it's center stage of your stores and staging. You're making sure that that's like the key product that's out there. And speaking of stores, you got to come back to making shopping a destination. Now, I know we're talking about shopping kind of going 360 and online, but there is something sort of magical about going into a store. That doesn't mean you have to ignore what's happening in your stores. You don't want your store to become a showroom for what they can have online. It's omni-channel, sales are happening all over. And I remember, you know, when I was in high school, going to the mall and going to the store was the destination. All we did was, you know, on the weekends, when I got my homework done, of course, I would get dressed up with my friends. I would go and hang out at stores. And it was amazing, and it was aspirational, and it probably had a lot to do with the fact that I now cover retail and consumer spending. So what are these brands doing wrong? Let's not talk about the positives. Let's kind of concentrate on what they're doing wrong here. Now, if you've been watching the news, Coach and Tiffany have reported some pretty dismal earnings over the last couple months. And that really has to do with pricing structure. So for the longest time, they really thought that their brand and their product had pricing power. Basically, they were immune to what inflationary situation was going on. They could pass on that price increase into the customer, and the customer would not flinch. Why? Because they were so sure that their product was going to be desirable and in demand for as long as it possibly can be in demand. But the problem was that it wasn't. It started losing its luster. So pricing structure started to, and what happened was that the consumer realized it was too expensive for just a necklace or just a Elsa Peretti ring, and they wanted to move on, okay? So also, the quality of merchandise. Now, I don't want to call any of the competitors out, but there are some of those bracelets from the competitors that I had mentioned that if you put their bracelets on and you wear them for a long time, your arm turns green. And I think you know who I'm talking about. I don't want to call them out, but you don't want that to happen. And that's part of the problem with the quality of merchandise. These companies are using less lackluster, I guess I should say, materials for their bracelets, and so that's why we're seeing such a problem with that material and the makeup of it, I guess I should say. So now what will keep Pandora on top for 2013, given everything that I just said, given all of that negative information? Here comes positivity. Heritage. What is driving Pandora? It's the heritage. It's a heritage brand. You want to pass those bracelets and rings and necklaces down to your granddaughters, and that's what your consumer is thinking. Also, as we mentioned, connecting on her terms, making sure that she is resonating with the brand. Also, thinking outside of the box. So given that we know that omnichannel retailing is happening, and given that we know that we want to get away from the idea of showrooming and we want to make sure that people know that the store is a place for a destination. Also, I wanted to mention that, given everything that is happening in the world in 2012, we had this hurricane in New York. We had, Sandy Hook, the school shooting that happened. People really want to kind of feel like they're part of a community. And for the longest time, stores used to be that. So we want to kind of get back to that idea of community. I know you think, I'm a jewelry retailer, how would that happen? You'd be surprised. People want to feel that connection. Even though they're connecting online, they want to go offline and go somewhere. So be a part of the community, think outside the box in those kind of terms, and then also keep an eye on consumer spending. This is going to be huge. I would watch those numbers. We're seeing a little bit of a downgrade in consumer spending. The last numbers that I saw, that means as well that the consumer long-term is not feeling that great about the economy. As I just said, keep an eye on it because you're going to have to work even harder to get her in and spending. Now, this is my last thought on Pandora. Now, I was online, and you have these videos that I think are so amazing. And I almost wanted to ask Dan if I could make my own video, because after I had gotten my job at Bloomberg and subsequently MSNBC, I had to sell my company, and because it was a conflict of interest. So I sold my company, and my mother sent me a Pandora bracelet. Okay, this is a true story, with a bunch of charms on it. One was a Buddha for good luck, another one was I love you, and the other one was the charm of a money bag. Because you know what? I was able to make money off that sale in the worst economy ever, and I was able to get out of it. And I know that everyone in this room can too. All right, thank you very much.